Okay, so lit RPG, huh? Everyone's talking about it, and we are diving deep today.
It really is having a moment.
It is. So we're going to see if this book, X-Treme American Dungeon League, lives up to the hype. Is it a touchdown or a total fumble? We've got the Amazon listing, and let me tell you, it's a wild one.
All right, you've piqued my interest. What we got?
So, for those listening who are maybe new to this whole lit RPG thing, imagine this. Video game logic, experience points, stats, you know the drill, but all happening in these fantasy worlds and stories.
Yeah, exactly. It's like taking that thrill of leveling up in a game and weaving it into a narrative.
Right, and that's what makes it so cool. But this book, X-Treme American Dungeon League. I mean, the title alone has me both laughing and kind of scratching my head.
It's a choice, that's for sure. Definitely signals that this isn't your grandpa's fantasy novel, you know?
No kidding. And no cover image on the listing. Bold move.
Adds to the mystery, though, right? Like, what are they hiding? Or, more likely, what kind of chaos are they hinting at?
Okay, you might be onto something there. Speaking of hinting at chaos, let's talk about the authors. We've got Virgil Knightley, who, based on his bio, seems to embrace the more, let's call it fun side of fantasy.
Fun is definitely one word for it. His other book is literally called Solar Dragons Need Love Too.
Okay, see? That's what I'm talking about. That right there. We're going to have to do a deep dive on that one for sure. But he's got a co-author for this book, right?
He does, Edgar Riggs. And this is where things get interesting, because Edgar's described as this grizzled adventurer type, like total opposite energy.
Oh, okay. So we've got Solar Dragons Need Love Too meets or drowns.
Exactly. You're picking up what I'm putting down. And that dynamic, I don't know, it either results in a train wreck or pure genius, right?
Yeah.
And then you add in the fact that the main character, Garth, is a, wait for it, therapist.
A therapist, okay. But like for adventurers dealing with like performance anxiety in the dungeon, I could see it.
Not quite. He's a therapist for monster girls.
You're kidding, right? Monster girl therapy.
You heard that right.
Yeah.
Apparently, not only are these monster girls absurdly attractive, direct quote from the description, by the way, but they're also his clients. So he's juggling dungeon delves and therapy sessions.
Okay, this is like nothing I've ever seen before, and I am here for it. Talk about unconventional, this like confront your demons, but like literally, and they're also your clients and maybe a little romantically interested.
You getting it.
This is amazing.
And, you know, for our listeners who might not be as familiar with lit RPG, imagine your typical fantasy novel, but then add in characters leveling up their stats like strength and intelligence, just like in a video game.
Yeah, it's like someone took D&D and turned it into a novel, but with, you know, hopefully a bit more literary merit.
Right. Although, who knows with this one? We'll see. But the point is, lit RPG takes those game mechanics and uses them to tell stories, explore themes.
It's more than just numbers and stats then. It can actually be deep.
Exactly. And that's what's exciting about X-Treme American Dungeon League, at least from what we're seeing here. It's taking those tropes, like confronting your demons, but adding these layers of humor, unconventional relationships. It's fresh.
Okay, so we've got monster girl therapy, dungeon delves, a writing duo that could either be a match made in heaven or a total disaster. I gotta say, this book is really shaping up to be something else. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, what about the actual writing? Does anything in this Amazon listing give us a clue about whether this is actually, you know, good?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Well, for starters, the publisher is Royal Guard Publishing, LLC. They're a smaller outfit that focuses specifically on fantasy and lit RPG.
So they're not just some big publisher churning out whatever's trending. They're actually invested in this world.
It seems that way. And when you have that kind of specialization, it usually means a higher bar for quality, right? They're catering to a dedicated audience. And those readers can be tough critics.
That's a good point. And speaking of critics, let's dive into those customer reviews. They're always a goldmine for those little details and hints. One that stood out to me was the mention of dark elf superiority. Sounds like they're playing with those classic fantasy tropes, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's like they're winking at the audiences, poking a little fun at those overused tropes. Remember how you were hoping for some humor in this?
Oh, yeah. And it sounds like it delivers. And did you catch that review mentioning Dr. Richard's plagiarism of movie speeches? I'm already picturing this character now.
Right. That little tidbit tells me this book doesn't take itself too seriously. It's self-aware, embracing the absurdity, which, let's be honest, is perfect for a story about monster girl therapy and dungeon crawling.
It's like they know exactly what kind of book they're writing and they're leaning into it. And you know what? I respect that. Me too. But it's not all fun and games, right? I mean, there's got to be some heart in there somewhere, right? It can't all be laughs, though, right? I mean, there's got to be some heart to it, some deeper message.
You're right. The story needs that balance. And you know what? This might sound a little cheesy, but
Yeah.
I think there's something really heartwarming about a story that embraces the unconventional, you know.
Oh, I totally get that. Like celebrating differences and all that.
Exactly. And maybe even finding beauty in those differences. Remember how we were talking about the author's contrasting styles?
Yeah. The whole solar dragons need love versus grizzled dungeon master thing.
Right. It just goes to show that you can find harmony in unexpected places.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, that's part of the message this book is trying to convey,
Right.
that we should be open to those unexpected pairings, those unconventional relationships.
Okay, now I'm really curious. I mean, who doesn't love a good story about finding connection in the most unlikely of places? And throw in some monster girls and dungeon delves, and you've got yourself a recipe for something truly special.
I think so too. And, you know, for our listeners out there who, like you said earlier, are looking for something different, something fresh in their fantasy, lit RPG might just be the answer.
I think you might be onto something. It's like discovering a whole new genre, a whole new world of storytelling possibilities.
And X-Treme American Dungeon League could be the perfect entry point.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's quirky, it's got heart. What's not to love?
Seriously. All right, folks, you heard it here first. If you're tired of the same old fantasy tropes and ready for something truly unique, definitely check out X-Treme American Dungeon League. Who knows, it might just become your new favorite. And hey, even if it doesn't, at least you've expanded your literary horizons, right? Until next time, happy reading, everyone.